Good afternoon. I greet you with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum. On behalf of Imam Tariq El-Amin, Resident Imam of Masjid Al-Taqwa, Talim Committee Chair, Dr. Aisha El-Amin, and committee members, Dr. Lionel Allen Jr., and myself, Dr. Gloria Bashir, and Brother Shamsuddin Sadiq. I want to welcome you to today's Talim, and the format is a lecture and panel discussion. And today's topic, presented by my good girlfriend, Dr. Debra Majeed, is on the Four Hijabs. And I would like to just give you a little insight about my wonderful sister here and all of her wonderful accomplishments and how so very proud that we are of her. Dr. Majeed is a professor emeritus of religious studies at Beloit College and is a religious historian who makes the interconnection between religion, gender, and justice central to her life's work. She retired from Beloit College in 2020, and she is the first African-American female and first Muslim to be tenured in the 175-year history of Beloit College, alhamdulillah, and the first to be awarded emeritus status. Her contributions to social justice on the campus and in the wider community during her 21 years of teaching led the city of Beloit to proclaim January 21st, 2011, Dr. Debra Majeed Day, alhamdulillah. Dr. Majeed received her doctorate in religious and theological studies from Northwestern University in 2001. And with the publication of her groundbreaking work, Polygyny, What It Means When African-American Muslim Women Share Their Husbands, in 2015, Dr. Majeed continues to work with mosque communities from the cultivation of resources and support for healthy marriage, regardless of form. Her current research has expanded to include domestic abuse as an act of violence that happens in the lives of women and the advocacy of the normalization of Muslim marriage contracts. Most recently, concern for family life issues led Dr. Majeed to develop Queen City Family Advocates, a grassroots initiative that interrogates and challenges attitudes, norms, and policies that undercut the health and well-being of families in Charlotte. As its first endeavor, Queen City Family Advocates compiled and distributed the 2020 election, where North Carolina candidates stand on issues for that's key for Muslims. This is a guide created by North Carolina Muslims to help North Carolinians, Muslims in particular, become more politically literate, encourage further political participation, and strengthen their sense of agency. Most recently, Dr. Majeed was certified as a guardian ad litem or legal advocate for abused and neglected children, something that is most necessary, particularly in these COVID times, and as we are all concerned about the welfare of our children. So I am going to turn it over to our dear sister, Dr. Majeed.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I know we have recently lost faithful people in the Chicago metropolitan area, so I'd like to begin with a dua for them. Oh Allah, forgive Hakeem Ali, Nellie Mae Wright, Dan Ramza, Yolanda Rahman, Brenda Rahman, and other believers who have departed this life. Elevate their station among those who are guided. Send them, O affirmer of truth, along the path of those who came before, and forgive us and them. Enlarge for them their grave and shed light upon them in it. O sustainer of humanity, extend to their loved ones the mercy and peace that is most needed during times of grief, that mercy and peace which passes all understanding. We petition you, O source of peace, at the beginning of the month of Shaban and in the form of a dua, because we know that the dua is the weapon of the believer. And because you said, call on me and I will respond. We thank you now for your answers, both in this world and the next. Amen.
Amen.
Assalamu alaikum. I bring greetings from the believers in Charlotte, North Carolina, particularly Masjid Al-Shahid and our resident Imam, Khalil Akbar. We are within shouting distance of Ramadan, alhamdulillah. And like many of you, I have begun to organize a plan of study and meditation, one which can lead us to greater depths with the Quran and our study of Arabic. In other words, to liberate ourselves from Quranic illiteracy. One tool in this direction is a 12-minute animated feature called the Four Hijabs. It is, to me, a visual and colorful encouragement for Muslims and others to rethink the limitations we sometimes place on the Quran and its ability to defend itself against even conventional treatments of a symbol of Muslim identity, like the hijab. So let me start first, and in no uncertain terms, that this is not a session on to veil or not to veil, or whether dressing in a specific way for women and men is a conscious choice, divine mandate, or something between. That would be another talim, a fruitful one, no doubt, but not today's mission. Rather, what I hope to accomplish here is to encourage us to revisit ayat we think we know, and thereby enhance our relationship to the Quran, to our God, and to each other. And there's no better time to pursue such a quest than before and during the month of Ramadan. So to begin, we will look at the places in the Quran where the term hijab or a form of it appears and what it means there. Next, we'll consider what might be a more appropriate term in the Quran for dress or garment. We then will move to an introduction of hijab as a multidimensional term. We'll view a 5-minute clip from the Four Hijabs, then take a brief journey through 12 verses referenced in the film. By then, we'll open up for comments. So I know this is a packed 60 minutes and we may have to shorten it because we've already used up 25 minutes. But inshallah, we will be more eager to study the Quran in more depth as a result. Next page, please. Okay. So the word hijab comes from the Arabic root ha, jim, ba. Its verbal form hajaba means to veil, to seclude, to screen. Its noun form, the generally used form, means a partition, barrier, screen, or physical symbolic veil. It's noteworthy that the keepers of the keys of the Kaaba, that is, those charged with protecting it, are said to have the hijaba of the Kaaba. Now, this image that you're seeing now is taken from the Quranic Arabic corpus, a helpful and free online resource. Most scholars agree that the word appears in 8 passages in the Quran, either as a noun or as a passive participle. And I'm sure Quranic teachers like Imam Rabbani and others are leading their classes in just this depth of discussion even more. Other scholars add Surah 12, Ayah 17, because there the term gashiyatun is translated as overwhelming. And so scholars add this term because the root means to cover or coverings or cover or veil. So ultimately the term hijab or veil is not used in the Quran to refer to an article of clothing for women or men. Rather, it refers to a spatial curtain that divides or provides privacy. A closer look at 3353 following the film will help us see this more. Next page, please. Now we turn to the term libas, the term that is actually used in the Quran for dress or garment. So although the term Quran has come to mean the headgear or outer garment of Muslim women, this term libas is what we see in the Quran, or a form of it. In its noun form, libas most often means garment or clothing, as shown in the 10 passages here. But it's used both literally to refer to physical material dress and adornments, and figuratively as a covering of human shortcomings and vulnerabilities, leads some scholars to also add 4 other passages. Down, please. Here you see those passages being 45, 30, 53, where we see yabasuna of verb form, which means wearing garments. We see the yapan, a noun form that sees that means garments, and both 35:12 and 16:14 use a verb form to refer to wearing adornments. So still, in the Quran, the righteousness or taqwa of libas is modesty. It is the correct balance between the function of libas as protection and as ornamentation. Modesty concerns both men's and women's gaze, gait, garments, and genitalia. We will soon see that the specific articles and aspects of clothing that we are mentioned with regard to women only as jilbab, a loose outer clothing or cloak, and khimar or scarf. Next page. Now we're going to look at hijab as a multi-dimensional term. And the handout that is on your, if you can bring that up quickly, please. There are 2 handouts in the chat available for your later exploration. And these handouts, one is titled Revisiting Hijab handout, and the other is titled Spiritual. And this will allow you, these 2 handouts will allow you to look at each dimension that we'll be talking about from the 4 hijabs. It'll allow you to look at the terms used in the film, and also in the four dimensions that we'll be discussing, okay? So let's go back to hijab as a multidimensional term. We'll be looking at spatial, meaning to separate, or mark as a border, establish as threshold between 2 distinct areas to divide public and private spaces. It's important to note that these 4 dimensions were coined in 1991 by Moroccan scholar Fatima Marnisi. Her work serves as a reminder that the hijab is not only the narrow visual representation of the headscarf some Muslim and Christian and Jewish and other women have been wearing over the centuries. We see here further dimensions of this term that a deeper study in the Quran and with our Arabic knowledge will help us better understand and engage with the messages of the Quran. So visual is the second form, to hide something from sight, to reserve view for those who deserve access, to shield one's chastity through modest dress. And we'll notice that in particular, visual, ethical, and spiritual are visual hijab, ethical hijab, spiritual hijab are dimensions that both males and female Muslims can subscribe to. So let's now cut to the film, or cue the film. We're going to be starting at point 221, I believe. And let me give you an introduction as Imam is bringing up the film. So this film opens with 3 individuals walking along what appears to be a deserted path. The cloud-filled sky is drawn in a bright green, suggesting a beach setting on a sunny day. The cool undertones of the gray pathway are dark enough not to compete with the sky and bright enough to remain in the background, allowing viewers to notice the characters' complexion and hair color as well as their attire. The youngest of the three, a girl, carries what appears to be a soccer ball and announces, "I want to learn the story of the hijab, the real story." A brief discussion among the trio ensues, first establishing various meanings of the term hijab, including to cover or protect as a boundary or barrier. This approach indicates the word can function grammatically, as we've just seen, as both a noun and a verb, and leads the youngest character to announce one of the film's key messages. So it's not just a headscarf? Moments later, the trio are transported to an auditorium where they meet the four hijabs, each configured as a geometric shape with mouth-like openings yet void of association to physical form. These hijabs will speak for themselves. Let's start the film.
Hello and welcome to all our viewers out there. I am the Ethical Hijab. We have a very special program planned today, one that we have needed for ages. Yes, folks, the wait is over. All four hijabs are together at last.
About
Sing
time,
it, sister.
hijab.
Woo! Togetherness.
I've convened this here gathering because we four hijabs have been kept apart far too long and because it was the right thing to do. My fellow hijabs, we have suffered and we have been wrongly accused of making others suffer. Am I right or am I wrong?
So right.
200%.
We've been misrepresented, distorted, contradicted, taken out of context, and we have been co-opted by patriarchal politics.
Boo,
power.
patriarchy.
So, we're here to reclaim our Quranic verses, clarify our layered meanings, and speak for ourselves.
Yeah.
Reclaim that
Preach.
Introductions first, shall we? Let's start with you, Spatial.
I am the spatial hijab. I am the divider between private and public spaces.
That's lovely. Visual.
Oh my God, my turn? Okay. Wow. I am the visual hijab. I am the modest dress that is prescribed for Muslim women and men.
Very good. I am the ethical hijab, and I am the gateway to piety and to modest behavior.
Last and historically least, I am the spiritual hijab. I'm the barrier blocking spiritual and intellectual advancement. I must be overcome.
Oh, gee, you're like so complex. I really envy that.
I envy your simplicity.
Envy is not so becoming of us.
Hello, spatial here, first one called, remember?
Please proceed.
I'm mentioned in the Quran only twice. I'm the curtain that separated the prophet's bedroom from those overstaying guests on his wedding night. And I'm also the curtain that protected Mary's privacy as she gave birth to Jesus. In other words, I divide that which is private from that which is public in the lives of Muslims.
Wait, there's nothing confining or inhibiting about that.
Your next visual.
I'm ready for my close-up. Be sure to get my good side. I'm just kidding. Every side's my good side. Okay, some say I'm overexposed, that I'm everywhere you turn. Others say I'm shallow and superficial, but honestly, I am so much more than just appearances. Just like spatial, I'm mentioned only twice in the Quran. I cover the bodies of Muslim men and women who express modesty through their dress.
That's men and women equally, without double standards.
But here's the kicker. You three get to operate literally, figuratively, and metaphorically. I'm just a scrap of cloth.
Yeah, but you're universal. Hindus, Jews, and Christians are also taught to dress modestly. That's really cool.
Plus, you get to have different appearances and different meanings in different places at different times. Now that's power.
Actually, they all show up in every world religion throughout history.
Great, so I attract a lot of attention. Most of it's still negative. Even when I look stunning.
Check the ego, please. Okay, time to move along. I'll go. I'm the ethical hijab. I'm referred to in 2 Quranic verses, for which I'm humbly grateful. I directed the Prophet's wives and his male and female kin to be reserved and to be more pious, especially as Islam's emerging message was facing great resistance.
Those were painful times for Muslims.
I'm amazed you can stay so diplomatic, ethical. Where's your anger?
I try and model the best behavior that I can. I'm the ethical threshold. I call upon Muslim women and men to inspire others through the behavior they model.
Ooh, I'm the fashion model, and you're the role model.
You ever notice how only you laugh at your jokes?
Okay, Spatial. Now, Spiritual, you have 10 verses. We each only have 2.
We can't compete with that.
But I still feel erased. No one's ever heard of me.
You may want to lose the self-pity.
I'm the one who inhibits consciousness. I impair vision. I deafen ears. I numb minds. I prevent Muslims from overcoming ignorance and illiteracy. Ignorance is not bliss. With critical inquiry and deeper knowledge, Muslims can transcend me.
Oh my God, spiritual hijab exists to be eclipsed.
Absolutely. For Muslims to resist oppression and to thrive, they have to open their minds.
The verses are available for all Muslims to read without mediation.
10 verses or not, I've been ignored.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go back to our screen, cut back to the document, Chicago Talim for Hijabs for Show. And we'll begin with ayah 3353. Great. Imam, would you read the English translation of that, please? Since you have it up.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Bismillah. O you who believe, enter not the prophet's houses until leave is given you for a meal, and then not so early as to wait for its preparation. But when you are invited, enter, and when you have taken your meal, disperse without seeking familiar talk. Such behavior annoys the prophet. He is ashamed to dismiss you, but Allah is not ashamed to tell you the truth. And when you ask his ladies for anything you want, ask them from before a screen. That makes for greater purity for your hearts and for theirs. Nor is it right for you that you should annoy Allah's messenger, or that you should marry his widows after him at any time. Truly such a thing is in Allah's sight an enormity.
If I had control of the screen, I would show you where the forms of hijab appear in the ayah, so forgive me for that. But let me say that Allah is concerned here with tact and rules of equity. That verse 53 was revealed the night the prophet married his cousin Zainab, and some wedding guests would not leave their bedroom. According to Al-Tabiri, Anas ibn Malik reported that the prophet left, returned, and still 3 men sat conversing in his home on his wedding night. Here, the hijab refers to the door or curtain that specifically protected the privacy of the prophet on one of his wedding nights. Fatima Marnisi argues that the hijab descended not to put a barrier between a man and a woman, but between 2 men. Let me read the hadith for you. You can stay there.
Okay.
The prophet had wed Zainab bin Jahsh. I was charged with inviting people to the wedding, and this is reported by Anas ibn Malik. I was charged with inviting people to the wedding supper. I carried out this charge. Many people came. They arrived in groups, one after the other. They ate and then they departed. I said to the prophet, Messenger of God, I invited so many people that I can't find anyone else to invite. At a certain moment, the prophet said, end the meal. Zainab was seated in a corner of the room. She was a woman of great beauty. All the guests departed except for 3 who seemed oblivious of their surroundings. They were still there in the room, chatting away. Annoyed, the prophet left the room. He went to Aisha's apartment. Upon seeing her, he greeted her, saying, peace be upon you, member of the household. And peace be upon you, prophet of Allah, responded Aisha to him. How do you like your new companion? And now here's my injection. Can you imagine wedding knife going to one of your other wives and she's saying, hey, listen, what you doing here? What do you think of your new wife? He responds, he thus made the round of the apartments of his wives, who greeted him in the same manner of Aisha. Finally, he retraced his steps and came again to Zainab's room. He saw that the 3 guests had still not departed. They were still there continuing to chat. The prophet was an extremely polite and reserved man. He quickly left again and returned to Aisha's apartment. I don't remember anymore whether it was I or someone else who went to him that the 3 individuals had finally decided to leave. In any case, he came back to the nuptial chamber. He put 1 foot in the room and kept the other outside. It was in this position that he let fall a sitter or curtain between himself and me, and the verse of the hijab descended at that moment. So as you can see here, we're beginning to see the representation in the Quran of hijab, as we saw in our definition of the term hijab, and the ways in which it's mentioned in the Quran, in the form of a physical screen. Okay, next page. Now let's go, we're going to go to, let's read the next ayat, would you please?
Bismillah. She placed the screen.
1917.
She placed a screen to screen herself from them. Then we sent her our angel, and he appeared before her as a man in all respects.
Hold on one second. Sorry, now I messed up. Okay, so here we're seeing the form of hijab that references the time that Maryam was separating herself. No form of hijab is included in this ayah. Oh, let's see. I'm sorry. The form of hijab included in this ayat is hijaban. It's a noun, just like the noun form was in 3353. It occurs 7 times in the noun form, meaning veil or curtain or screen. But this was the time in which Mother Maryam was segregating herself after, in preparation of the birth of Isa. Next place, please. Okay, 2430, would you read that one, please?
Yes. Say to the believing men that they should lower their gaze and guard their modesty. That will make for greater purity for them. And Allah is well acquainted with all that they do.
Okay, here we see in 2430, there's no form of the term hijab, but it is included, these 2 verses are included as a reminder that the command to guard one's modesty or to be chaste is directed both to women and men. What you do see here is the term furujahum with an attached pronoun, and it is translated as chastity in both 30 and 31. Would you read 31 as well, please?
And say to the believing women that they should lower their gaze and guard their modesty, that they should not display their beauty and ornaments except what must ordinarily appear thereof, that they should draw their veils over their bosoms and not display their beauty except to their husbands, their fathers, their husbands' fathers, their sons, their husbands' sons, their brothers or their brothers' sons, or their sisters' sons, or their women, or the slaves whom their right hands possess, or male servants free of physical needs, or small children who have no sense of the shame of sex, and that they should not strike their feet in order to draw attention to their hidden ornaments. And O ye believers, turn ye all together towards Allah that ye may attain bliss.
Given the absence of specificity here and the influence of social forces on the way in which the hijab verses were understood by commentaries like Al-Jabiri, some scholars argue that the theological validity of classical rulings on hijab is derived from Quranic commentaries rather than from the Quranic prescriptions. And it's important to note that the ayat here is cited most in regard to women's dress, which is 2431, is preceded by an exhortation to men to lower their gaze. Read 3359, please, Imam.
O Prophet, tell thy wives and daughters and the believing women that they should cast their outer garments over their persons when abroad. That is most convenient that they should be known and not molested. And Allah is all forgiving, most merciful.
So here we have the term jilbab. And jilbab, as you'll notice on your, when you get your handout, is, let me see, means loose outer garment or overgarment. And after the verse 3353, this verse institutionalizes Muslim women's dress for many Muslims. But I hope you're beginning to see that the themes are broader. This verse was revealed to deter violence against women prevalent in the unsafe streets of Medina. At the time, Muslims did not have private outhouses, and when women had to relieve themselves, they had to go outside. They might run into immoral persons, and if they were not wearing veils, those people would try to accost them. The Prophet wanted to mainly assure the safety of his wives and other women, other Muslim women. In other words, the term hijab underwent semantic shifts to evolve from a curtain to an institution due to the efforts of medieval theological lawyers. Clearly, seclusion in the pre-modern era was an elite affair only, relying on the free movement of women from the lower classes to provide goods and services. Initially, hijab was a means of affording the prophet's wives and providing them domestic comfort and privacy, and also protection from hypocrites by way of seclusion in the home on the one hand, and jilbab, the loose outer garment, on the other. And that was concerned with individual female appearances when they go outside. But this association of hijab in its meaning of domestic segregation with garments to be worn in public resulted in the use of the term hijab for concealing clothes worn outside of the home. Could you read 3332, please?
O consorts of the Prophet, ye are not like any other women. If ye do fear Allah, be not too complacent of speech, lest one in whose heart is a disease should be moved with the desire. But speak ye a speech that is just.
So here we come to, again, the term hijab is not mentioned. Instead, we have itakituna, a form of a form 8 verb that is translated "you fear Allah." We have the meaning here: take as a shield, or given you as regardful of your duty to Allah. A certain type of behavior is expected. Go to ayat 3333, please.
And stay quietly in your houses and make not a dazzling display like that of the former times of ignorance, and establish regular prayer, and give regular charity, and obey Allah and his messenger. And Allah only wishes to remove all abomination from you, ye members of the family, and to make you pure and spotless.
Hijab is not referenced in this ayah either. Instead, we have arajja, the noun form of rijs, which means punishment or deep deserving punishment, or something in which there is no good or uncleanness or filth. In this context, we're talking about removing your doubts or suspicion or sin, and that's something in which there is no good. Here, Allah wants to remove that which is remove anything that precludes us from entering the gateway to piety and modesty. I hope you're seeing that these ayah mainly call the wives of the Prophet, 5 at the time, as well as his entire household, to observe ethical hijab as the message of Islam was still being formulated, but they call us to observe and act in our own time. 3332 helps clarify the relationship between the Prophet's wives and the Muslim community. According to Taberi, the timing of their revelation was also another challenging military period in Medina, when the prophet's family needed more protection, and they were expected to inspire other Muslims. Although the injunction, specifically the first part, is directed to the wives of the prophet, some scholars understand 3333 as an injunction pertaining to all Muslim women. Can we now move to spiritual hijab? The veil as a barrier that inhabits deep spiritual growth. And please read Ayah 625, Imam.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You said 625?
Yes.
Okay. Of them, there are some who pretend to listen to thee, but we have thrown veils on their hearts, so they understand it not, and deafness in their ears. If they saw every one of the signs, not they will believe in them, insomuch that when they come to thee, they would dispute with thee. The unbelievers say, these are nothing but tales of the ancients.
So in this verse and several of the others that will be listed under spiritual hijab, we have the term akinatin, which means covering. So in this and in Ayah 746, we're going to see another form of hijab. In Ayah Surah 12, 107, we're going to see a reference to the thing that covers. So in all of these, the format is going to be not about gender, but about how we are, how our screen or cover or barrier can be imposed by both Allah and us. So for the sake of time, let's go down to Ayah 42:5, Imam. I'm sorry, 41:5, Fusilat 5.
They say, our hearts are under veils, concealed from that to which thou dost invite us, and in our ears is a deafness, and between us and thee is a screen. So do thou what thou wilt, for us we shall do what we will.
And here we get this, the screen here is the term, a form of hijab, okay, which we notice is mentioned in the Quran at least 7 times, but here it's referencing a screen that we can put, that we can impose upon ourselves, just as there's a screen that our behavior will force Allah to impose a screen on us. So if we look at these 10, we look at these 10 verses, and with the other categories, we can see that there's much more to the dimensions of the term hijab. In reality, there can be the hijab of coercion, the hijab of choice. They both look the same. The hijab of oppression and the hijab of liberation looks the same. The hijab of deception and the hijab of integrity can look the same. You can no more tell the extent of a Muslim woman's sense of personal bodily integrity or piety from 45 inches of cloth than you can spot a fly on the wall at 2,000 feet. So I'm going to open up now for comments. And let me end with my prepared comments with the perspectives of Amina Wadu, an African-American female Islamic scholar. She says, if you think that the difference between heaven and hell is 45 inches of material, boy, would you be surprised. This is my hijab mantra. Over the past several decades, the hijab has been given disproportionate symbolic significance both within and without Muslim communities. Like a 6th pillar, we cannot discuss Islam and gender without discussing the hijab. While overloaded with multiple meanings, it is often the single marker used to determine community approval or disapproval. So at the end of it, my sisters and brothers, hijab is a style of dress in which we all should ascribe, both men and women. We should ascribe for a deeper understanding of the passages that we briefly reference, and they could help us draw closer to Allah. They can prepare us for the month of Ramadan, and they can help us see that there are multiple meanings to a conventional word we have taken for granted, which is hijab. Okay, so let's open up for comments. I know we're short on time, so I cut out some stuff so that we could have time to talk. So comments or questions from anyone?
That was absolutely amazing. I mean, what an amazing presentation. It's so incredibly informative and really allowing all of us as viewers to begin to see hijab is so beyond that 45 inches of material, right? The spatial, the visual, the ethical, as well as the spiritual has, though we've all, we understand, or so we thought, we understood the hijab, I certainly feel very much enlightened by your presentation, and particularly the spatial aspect. That I thought that was extremely beneficial to me. So we do want to open it up for questions. I don't want to take all the time. And let's see.
Be hosting, using her cell phone to host the Zoom.
Who's that talking? We have a comment from Sister Hakima. Thank you for your presentation. She didn't keep the handouts, but we'll make sure that you get a copy, Hakima. Are there any questions?
I think it's important, what the handouts will do, inshallah, was allow you to take these passages and go yourself individually to the locations in the Quran, so that you can go in much more depth than we were able to do here. I'm sorry that the spiritual hijab is the most important aspect, but it's the one that we shortened because of time considerations here. But those 10 verses remind us that perhaps we have taken too much effort to focus on outer appearances and have taken less effort to work on our own spiritual growth as both men and women. And that here preparing for Ramadan is a perfect time for us to go deep in the Quran, to go directly to the Arabic, and begin to better understand that these passages have fuller meaning for all of us.
Yes, very much so. Dr. Deborah, I'm going to impose upon you and request that we have a part 2 of this topic, because I very much would love to dive deeper into these, into the concepts you presented today. So I just want to go back a little bit and talk about the term libas, which is used as a term for dress and garment. Okay. And can you expand just a little bit on that? That was kind of early on in your presentation.
Yes, ma'am. And this was something, I'm telling you, a part of I tend to share what I'm learning as I'm learning. So this is a work in process deeply, clearly, right? But I did not realize, I've read these passages before, like the rest of us have, as we're reading during Ramadan, the entire Quran, but I was not paying attention to how the Arabic was being translated. So for me, libas was a new word, right? And I went around telling my husband, I'm your libas, okay? I'm your covering, I'm your garment, you're my covering, you're my garment, right? And so to think of a term that is Quranically associated with garment or clothing or covering, and to recognize that term has literally been so far removed from our discussions of modest dress, I was just forced to raise that up. And so it reminded me how little of the Quran we really pay attention to when we get narrowly guided or directed to look in a specific way at a specific term. So if we say that, oh, you mean hijab, does not appear in the Quran more than 7 or 8 times, depending upon, you know, your how you're translating it. And to think that this word libas exists was a real reckoning for me. And it just said, you know what? You know very little about your revelation. And this is the guidebook that you say is for life. And if you're only reading it in English, you're missing so much. But alhamdulillah, Allah said that Allah will guide those who seek him and seek his revelation. So don't be afraid of the Arabic. It's been taking me forever, right? But Allah's patience and mercy will reveal to you those as you come to study, as you come to bring a sincere heart, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open some jewels to you. And I'm like, oh my God, here comes Ramadan. Yay!
You know, going back, and yes, and yes, and yes to all of what you said, but also going back to leave us, how that is the righteousness or your taqwa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Being how that is represented in with your libas, right? As that modesty for both men and women.
Yeah.
Because as we know that so many people often just, you know, think of modesty with regard to the sisters and not brothers. And that modesty is so encompassing, right? Not just dressed, but attitude.
The realization, if we go back to 24, ayat 24, 30 and 31, so there is a prescription that's talking to the women, and it's preceded by one that tells the men to lower their gaze. So Allah is linking the mutual responsibility of men and women to engage in modest behavior and to not limit themselves on their visual, on their physical considerations, but to be regardful in our hearts. So taqwa is about that God consciousness, that being remindful that everything I do, everything I say, everything I think, everywhere I go, Allah is aware. And also the notice that on the day of judgment, there's gonna be a screen that's gonna separate the believers from hell. And I'm like, oh my God, and I'm just want to talk about some sister and tell her to put her hair back under this scarf. There's much more to be gained. Yeah, so I'm excited. Okay, fine.
I feel your excitement and it gives me chills, frankly. Just, you know, just absorbing all of this. And I know that we're running short on time. Imam Muhammad, Imam Tariq, do we have a little more time or do we need to wrap up now?
I think we could probably go another 5 minutes or so, if that's okay with Dr. Deborah.
Okay.
If there are a couple more questions, of course. It was my technical difficulty that caused our problem, so I'm sorry.
Not a problem. Since I have the mic, I want to make a quick comment. Thank you so much, Dr. Deborah, for that. And what you said in presenting the hijab in such a multi-dimensional way, this to me is such a reflection of how we should engage our deen, right? You know, deen al-fitr. This is something that, you know, we don't look at taqwa, we don't look at the performance of ritual as an accomplishment of taqwa, or as an attainment of taqwa, you know, in and of itself. So this multi-dimensional presentation that you've given us of a word that is often confined to simply a physical representation, right? Something that is performance. I think this is exactly the type of mindset that allows us to gain the most and gain the most of what Allah has given us, which is guidance, which is for our whole life. And relates to every facet of it. So thank you so much again. So much to think about, and we definitely want to impose on you for a part 2. So I'm gonna.
Yes.
Inshallah. And I just want to encourage everyone that as we're moving toward looking at Ramadan, that now is the perfect time to begin to rush to Allah and ask for direction and how you can go deeper into this text and how you can begin to ask ourselves, am I wearing my ethical hijab today? How does my visual hijab look? How does my spiritual hijab look today? And if we were able to do that individually as community, oh my goodness, how might that change the way we return to the masjid when we're able, when it's safe enough for us to do so? How might that impact how we interact with each other when it's safe enough to do so? Oh my goodness. We could change the world. Literally, we could change the world.
Yes,
So,
yes. I think we can change the world.
Something. So,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes. I think that you know, as we all are striving to enhance ourselves, to better ourselves, to better educate ourselves, and you know, this I think has gone a long way for me because the concept of hijab is so often misconstrued, as we all know, and is made so small. And you just really enlarged the concept of hijab. I thank you for that.
Well, inshallah. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for allowing me to present. And I love all of you all. Chicago, you know, whatever I produce, that's good. All acknowledgement goes to Allah. Any mistakes and the numerous ones that I made today are mine alone. But Chicago, Masjid Al-Taqwa, you must know that anything that I do is I'm simply a product of you. So, alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. I'll turn it over to our imam. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I'm going to turn it over to our facilitator, Dr. Gloria.
Dr. Glow.
Thank you so much. This was absolutely amazing. This was a special treat as we are on the cusp of Ramadan, as we're all trying to, you know, study up and get ourselves ready. So this was absolutely amazing to me. And I'm sure to all of us that the chat box is just overflowing with beautiful comments of thank yous and appreciation. And just as you are a product of Masjid Al-Taqwa, so am I and all of us who are here today. We so appreciate our leadership there, all of our imams and our studies and our Islamic studies led by Imam Rabbani, and our recent new book study being led by Imam Tariq. So we are really enjoying this. This is wonderful. Any last comments or questions before we close?
And as we're waiting for that, Sister Glow, if I can make just one announcement.
Yes.
My next book project is looking at widowhood among African American Muslim women, particularly those over 60. I've included my number and email in the chat. So if there's anyone who's a widow who wants to share her experience and provide advice, because African American women are outliving our husbands, and we need as a community to figure out a better way to address family needs. So feel free to text me or email me, and I'll put number and email in the text. Thank you so much.
Yes. I do want to, there's one particular comment from Brother Bill Chambers, and he says, Alhamdulillah, Dr. Majeed is still one of the best teachers I've ever had. Well, you know, you don't get to earn the designation of emeritus status at your institution unless you're very good at what you do. So we really appreciate that.
Alhamdulillah.
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 Yes. So on that note, we're going to close out. Brother Imam, would you like to close us in dua or?
Sure, that's fine. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Debra, and thank you, Dr. Gloria, for your facilitation. We ask for Allah's continued guidance, His continued protection. Allah, keep our hearts pure. Allow us to find joy in your remembrance. Keep us on the straight path. Allow us to be of those who exemplify the best of reaching the human potential that you have given us. Allow us to be a light for those who are in distress. Keep our families safe. Keep us on the straight path. Keep us safe mentally, spiritually, physically. Allow us to be a strong community, a community that shows love towards one another, towards kindness, shows kindness towards those in need. Allow us to be raised up on the day of judgment with the assurance of your peace and your reward of Jannah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr. Inna al-insana la fi kusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawassaw bil haqqi wa tawassaw bis. Amen.